Commander Elias Kane's eyes snapped open, and for a moment he could not breathe. The world around him was dark, broken only by the soft flicker of emergency lights that painted the walls of the medical bay in red and shadow. His head throbbed with a heavy pressure, and when he tried to move, pain shot through his chest. Something had gone wrong. The last thing he remembered was his ship, the Aurora, cruising in the outer rim beyond charted space. They had detected a strange energy pulse, an anomaly unlike anything in human records. Then the alarm screamed, the lights burst, and the void swallowed everything. He had expected to die. Instead, he found himself here, alive, but in a silence so deep it felt unnatural. Kane slowly pushed himself upright on the bed, his breathing sharp against the stillness. Panels along the wall sparked, showing cracked screens and torn wiring. The ship was damaged, severely. But it was not the ruined state of the Aurora that froze him. It was the figure at the far side of the room. At first, Kane thought it was a hallucination born from the concussion pounding in his skull. The figure seemed unreal, like a reflection of starlight given shape. Tall, slender, and glowing faintly, it looked almost human, yet not. Its skin shimmered with colors that shifted like liquid silver under the dim red light. Its eyes, large and luminous, were fixed on him. The figure did not wear any suit, armor, or protection. It was bare in the cold air of the broken ship, vulnerable in every sense. Yet it showed no fear. Kane's soldier's instincts screamed to act. His hand twitched toward the tool rack near the bed, where a metal rod could serve as a weapon. But he stopped himself. The figure moved, and the action was nothing like an attack. Slowly, carefully, the being lowered itself to the floor. It moved forward on hands and knees, crawling across the room as though each step required effort. Kane's heart pounded. Every scrape of its limbs against the metallic floor echoed. He sat frozen, unsure whether to shout, to run, or to strike. But then the being did something unexpected. It smiled. The expression was unmistakable. Its lips curved gently upward, its luminous eyes soft with warmth. There was no threat in that smile, no trick. It was simple, disarming, and startlingly human. Kane blinked, stunned. His training told him to distrust. Unknown species could be dangerous, deceptive, or worse. Humanity had long speculated what would happen in the first encounter with alien life, and most predictions leaned toward disaster. But in this silent, shattered medical bay with red lights flickering and sparks falling from broken panels, Kane felt something he did not expect. He felt safe. The alien crawled closer until it was at the edge of his bed. Kane's instinct to retreat tugged at him again, but the smile held him in place. The being tilted its head, as though studying him. Slowly, with deliberate gentleness, it reached out a hand. The hand was strange, with elongated fingers and faint, glowing veins running beneath the surface, but the motion was not threatening. Kane hesitated, then lifted his own hand. Their fingertips brushed, and suddenly Kane's mind was no longer alone. Images flashed across his vision. Vast starfields, spirals of light, and towering crystalline structures that sang with soundless energy. He saw beings like the one before him, living in harmony among these structures. He felt emotions, hope, fear, and desperation. And then he saw the shadow, black machines with red eyes, sweeping across the stars, harvesting, consuming, imprisoning. Kane gasped and pulled back, breaking the contact. His chest rose and fell rapidly as he tried to process what he had just experienced. The alien tilted its head again, still smiling softly, but now its eyes carried something else. A plea. "You're asking for help," Kane whispered, his voice rough in the silence. The alien gave a single, slow nod. Kane pressed a hand to his temple. His heart raced with questions. Who was this being? Why was it here on his ship? What had attacked them? And what did it want from him, a single human stranded far from home? But the images remained burned into his mind. He had seen them, machines that enslaved entire species, reducing them to silence. He had felt the alien's fear, raw and unfiltered. More importantly, he had felt something else. Trust. This being had crossed the room to him not with weapons or commands, but with complete vulnerability. No defenses, no threats, just an open hand and a smile. Kane looked at the alien again, and for the first time since waking, his fear eased. He still did not understand, but he understood enough. "You came here because you think I can do something," he said. The alien's luminous eyes widened slightly. Then with a slow and deliberate movement, it pressed its hand over its chest and then pointed at him. Kane understood. It believed in him. He let out a shaky laugh. "You've got the wrong guy," he muttered. "I'm just a man trying to keep his ship in one piece." But even as he said the words, something stirred inside him. Humanity had always been underestimated, even by itself. Fragile, short-lived, and reckless, yet somehow still surviving, still reaching farther than logic said it should. If what he saw in those visions was true, then maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a mistake that this alien had come to him. The ship groaned suddenly, breaking the silence. Metal strained as if something was pressing against the hull from the outside. Kane's instincts sharpened. Danger was not far. He turned back to the alien. "If we're going to survive," he said, his voice steady now, "we do it together." "Why?" Alien's smile brightened, faint light shimmering across its face like starlight on water. For the first time since the disaster began, Kane felt that he was not alone. The arrival of this being was not an accident. It was the beginning of something greater, a bond that could change not just his fate but perhaps the fate of humanity itself. And as the ship trembled under the weight of an unseen enemy, Kane prepared himself. Humanity's first contact had come not with fire or war but with a smile in the silence of a broken ship. It was enough to give him hope. Commander Elias Kane did not remember the last time silence felt so heavy. The Aurora's corridors were quiet, save for the distant hum of damaged systems trying to keep life support alive. Emergency lights still painted everything in red, and sparks fell occasionally from broken panels like falling stars. Beside him walked the alien. Kane still did not know her name, but he had started thinking of her as she. Something about her gentle movements, her curious eyes, and the soft way she smiled made her feel more personal than it. She walked with no armor, no protection, only her glowing skin that shimmered faintly in the shadows. Kane carried a makeshift spear he had crafted from a broken support bar. He didn't know what they might face in the ruined halls, but instinct told him not to walk unprepared. The alien seemed unafraid. She moved as if she trusted him completely. That unsettled him. "Why me?" he muttered under his breath as they passed a collapsed section of the corridor. The alien looked at him, tilting her head in that curious way again as though trying to read his thoughts, and then it happened again. When their eyes met, Kane felt the faint ripple in his mind, like a soft touch inside his thoughts. Images flickered, the same crystalline towers, the same alien people, their songs, their laughter. He saw them sharing emotions like humans, shared words. He felt warmth, belonging, and connection. Then the images shifted. Black machines, towering. Over them, chains of light binding them, their voices silenced. Fear, despair, helplessness. Kane stumbled against the wall, breaking the connection. He gasped, his chest heaving. "Stop, just stop." The alien froze, her expression worried. She reached out a hand as if to comfort him, but Kane raised his palm. "No, it's fine," he said, forcing a breath. "I just wasn't ready." She lowered her hand but did not look away. Her glowing eyes were full of patience, as though telling him she would wait as long as it took. Kane realized what she was doing. She had no voice he could understand. Her people communicated through empathy, through sharing feelings and memories directly. Words were too slow, too limiting. Touch, eye contact, these were their language. And somehow, it worked on him. Kane leaned back against the cold wall, running, a hand over his face. He thought about what he had seen. The machines were real. They had captured her people, and for some reason, she believed he could help. "You don't know what humans are like," Kane said quietly. "We're not saviors. We break things more often than we fix them." The alien tilted her head again, then gave that small, patient smile. It was the same smile she had given when she crawled across the room to him earlier, the one that disarmed him completely. He sighed. "You really believe it, don't you? That I can do something?" She nodded slowly. Kane pushed himself off the wall and started walking again. "Then let's figure out why." They moved deeper into the ship. The Aurora was not large by military standards, but in its ruined state, the corridors felt like endless mazes. Sections were sealed off by collapsed beams, and entire decks were without power. As they walked, Kane noticed how the alien reacted to the ship. She touched the walls with her long fingers, almost reverently, as if she could sense the energy within. At times, she paused near broken conduits and closed her eyes, her skin glowing faintly brighter. Kane guessed she could feel the electrical pulses, maybe even understand the ship better than he could. Eventually, they reached the control hub outside the bridge. The doors were fused shut, sparks dripping from the seams. Kane cursed under his breath. "No way we're opening that without tools." The alien stepped forward. She placed both hands on the door and closed her eyes. Her glow intensified, and Kane swore he felt the air shift around them. Then the door groaned. Metal strained, and with a sharp crack, the lock disengaged. The door slid open halfway before, grinding to a stop. Kane stared. "Well, that works too." The alien looked back at him, smiling faintly, as though amused by his surprise. Kane shook his head. "Remind me not to play cards against you." Inside, the bridge was in chaos. Consoles were shattered, the captain's chair torn from the floor. But one screen still flickered faintly. Kane rushed to it, brushing aside shattered glass. He tapped the controls until the screen steadied. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Outside the ship, drifting in the void, dozens of metallic shapes surrounded the Aurora. At first glance, they looked like debris. But Kane zoomed the image closer. No, these were not debris. These were probes, black angular machines with glowing red cores slowly crawling over the Aurora's hull. The same machines from the alien's visions. Kane's grip tightened on the console. His worst fear was real. The machines had found them. The alien moved beside him, staring at the screen. Her glow dimmed as fear rippled through her. Kane felt it brush his mind, cold terror that was not his own. He clenched his jaw. "Hey," he said firmly, turning to her. "Don't give me that look. We're still breathing. That means we're not done yet." She looked at him, startled, as though not expecting defiance in the face of such danger. Her glow steadied again, faint but stronger than before. Kane pointed at the screen. "Those things can break ships, they can capture your people. But they don't know humans, they don't know how we think. That gives us an edge." He tapped the console again, pulling up what little data the ship had recorded. The probes moved. With precision, scanning, probing, following predictable patterns. Machines were efficient, logical. Humans were not. "We fight different," Kane muttered. "We survive by doing the stupid thing nobody expects." The alien tilted her head, then touched his arm lightly. A vision flickered. Her people, trapped in glowing chains, eyes dim with hopelessness. Then she showed him something else, the image of himself standing tall, a spear in hand, the chains breaking. Kane exhaled. "You're really putting this on me, huh?" She only smiled. For a moment, Kane wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that he was just one man against an army of machines. But something in her eyes silenced him. It wasn't blind faith, it was recognition. She saw something in him that maybe he couldn't see himself, and that was enough to keep him moving. The hours passed as they searched the bridge for supplies. Kane found a half-functional data pad, a portable power cell, and a few emergency rations. The alien refused food but touched the power cell with fascination, her glow brightening as though she could feed from its energy. At one point, Kane sat back against the wall, exhaustion catching up to him. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the alien was sitting across from him, watching quietly. "You don't talk," Kane said softly, "but you're louder than most people I've ever met." She tilted her head, curious. Kane smiled faintly. "You remind me of home. People back on Earth, and we fight, we argue, we make a mess of things. But when it matters, we stand together. I think maybe that's what you're asking for. Not a hero, just someone who won't run." The alien's eyes softened. She reached out again, fingers brushing his hand. This time Kane didn't pull away. The vision came clearer now. He saw her people again, but this time their voices were faintly rising. Weak, but not gone. And through the vision, he felt something else. A bridge forming. Not just her showing him memories, but him showing her. His determination, his stubbornness, the human refusal to give up. Her glow brightened, and for the first time, Kane heard something. Not words, not exactly. A single whisper in his mind, shaped clumsily, but clear. Kane. His heart skipped a beat. She had spoken his name. He stared at her, wide-eyed. She smiled, radiant, and for once Kane didn't doubt. The bond was real, and it was growing stronger. That night, if time still mattered on a broken ship drifting in space, Kane could not sleep. He stood at the viewport, watching the probes crawl over the hull. The alien stood beside him, her glow faint but steady. For the first time since the disaster began, Kane no longer felt alone. Whatever came next, they would face it together, and, in that silent bond, Kane began to believe that maybe humanity truly did have something no machine could ever match. The hum of the Aurora's wounded systems was broken by a metallic thud. Commander Elias Kane froze, his spear gripped tightly in both hands. The alien woman, Lyra, as he had begun to call her in his thoughts, stilled as well, her glowing eyes turning toward the sound. Another thud followed, louder this time, and the deck beneath their boots vibrated faintly. "They're inside," Kane muttered. Through the flickering bridge monitors, they had seen the black probes crawling over the hull. Kane had expected it was only a matter of time before they forced entry. Now that time had come, he looked at Lyra. She showed no fear on her face, but through their bond, he could feel her tension ripple into him. Kane breathed steadily, fighting to keep his own emotions controlled. If she could feel him, then he wanted her to feel determination, not fear. "We don't run," he whispered. "Not yet." The first breach came near the cargo hold. The bulkhead split with a shriek of tearing metal, and the probe slithered in like a spider of black steel. Its body was angular, its limbs jointed and sharp, its red eye glowing like a burning coal. Kane crouched low behind a toppled storage crate. Lyra knelt beside him, her glow dimmed so she would not stand out in the dark. The probe scanned the corridor, red light sweeping across the walls. "Stay down," Kane whispered. The probe's steps clanged against the deck as it crept forward. Kane's grip on the spear tightened. His instincts screamed at him to attack, but logic told him he would not win a direct fight. Machines like this were designed for control, precision, and speed. Humans survived differently. Kane picked up a small metal shard from the floor and tossed it down the opposite hallway. It clattered loudly. The probe instantly whirled, its red eye flashing brighter as it scuttled toward the noise. "Move," Kane hissed, tugging Lyra's arm. They slipped behind the machine, moving quickly but quietly through the corridor. Kane's heart hammered in his chest, every breath sharp. When they turned the next corner, another probe crawled down the ceiling, its limbs clamping into the metal like hooks. Kane's stomach sank. They were surrounded. Lyra touched his arm, and for a split second he felt her thought. Fear. But then she pressed harder, sending him another image. Trust. Kane exhaled. "All right," he whispered. "Let's make them chase us." The chase through the Aurora's broken halls was chaos. Probes poured in from multiple breaches, their claws tearing through doors and bulkheads as if the ship's walls were paper. Their red lights swept like hunting beams across the corridors. Kane and Lyra ducked through collapsed sections, crawled through vents, and scrambled over twisted debris. Kane's lungs burned, his body straining, but adrenaline pushed him forward. Every time a probe cornered them, he used distraction, throwing scraps of metal, cutting wires to spray sparks, triggering doors to slam shut. The machines adapted, but not fast enough. Kane's unpredictable movements kept them guessing. Lyra followed closely, her presence calm despite the chaos. Through their bond, Kane felt her amazement. Her people thought in patterns, logic, precision. But Kane was improvising every second, and to her it was like watching fire dance where no fire should exist. Finally, they tumbled into the engineering bay and sealed the door behind them. Kane braced against the wall, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. That, he gasped, was too close. Lyra touched his arm, her glow pulsing softly. Kane felt her thought again, this time not fear, but wonder. She was impressed. He chuckled dryly. Don't look at me like I planned any of that. I was just making it up as I went. But even as he said it, he realized something important. Unpredictability was their weapon. The machines studied patterns. Humans broke them. The engineering bay was half destroyed, but Kane found what he needed: fuel cells, wiring, and access to the coolant lines. An idea sparked in his mind. Dangerous, desperate, but possible. He turned to Lyra. If we're going to survive, we need to hurt them, badly, and to do that, we make a trap. Lyra tilted her head, curious. She touched his hand and he felt her thought. How? Kane crouched beside the coolant pipes. These lines run under half the ship. If I rupture them and feed the fuel cells into the flow, we can create a blast strong enough to take out the probes in this section. Dangerous for us, yes, but deadly for them. Lyra frowned faintly, her glow dimming as if uncertain. She pressed, her hand to his temple, and an image flashed in his mind. Her people standing still in neat lines, building careful, perfect machines. No chaos, no explosions, no recklessness. That's the difference, Kane said softly. Your people survive with control. Mine, we survive with risk. It's what makes us human. Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. The work was frantic. Kane pried open the coolant valves with shaking hands, his spear discarded nearby. Lyra assisted, her glowing fingers delicately weaving wires and aligning circuits, as if she could feel their energy. The pounding outside the door grew louder. The probes were closing in, their claws tearing through the barricade. Almost there, Kane muttered. He jammed the last fuel cell into place and rigged the detonator. The door burst open. Probes poured in, red eyes burning through the dark. Kane grabbed his spear, planting himself between the machines and Lyra. His heart raced, but his voice was steady. Come on, then. The first probe lunged. Kane sidestepped, slamming the spear into its joint. Sparks flew, the machine shrieking. In synthetic rage, another probe swung its claws. Kane ducked, rolled, and shoved the butt of the spear into its eye. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to stall. Now! Kane shouted. Lyra's hands glowed bright as she sent a surge of energy through the wires. The coolant pipes howled, pressure building in a deadly crescendo. Kane dove, pulling Lyra down with him. The explosion ripped through the bay, a white-blue firestorm that consumed the probes. Metal screamed and shattered. The shockwave hurled Kane against the wall, his ears ringing. Heat washed over him, then silence. When he opened his eyes, smoke filled the bay. The probes were gone, reduced to twisted shards of black metal. Kane groaned, pushing himself upright. His body ached everywhere, but he was alive. Lyra knelt beside him, her glow dim but steady. She touched his shoulder, and through their bond he felt it. Relief. He laughed hoarsely. Trial by fire, we made it. Lyra tilted her head at the words, then smiled. Her glow brightened, wrapping the wreckage in soft light. Kane felt her thought ripple gently. Together, he nodded. Yeah, together. For the next hours they moved through the aurora cautiously. The explosion had driven the probes back, but Kane knew more would come. Machines did not give up. Still, something had changed. Lyra no longer moved with quiet hesitation. She stayed, close to Kane, her eyes following his every decision, her trust absolute. And Kane, for the first time since waking, he believed they might actually stand a chance. As they reached the observation deck, Kane stopped, staring out into the void. Beyond the drifting wreckage of the aurora, he could see it, an asteroid base glowing, faintly with crimson light. Lyra stepped beside him. When she touched his hand, an image filled his mind. Her people inside that base, bound by chains of red light, their voices silenced. Kane swallowed hard. That's where they are. Lyra nodded. The machines had her people, and Kane knew now why she had chosen him. Humans were the flaw in the system, the chaos the machines couldn't predict. He looked at her, then back at the base. His body was bruised, his ship broken, but his resolve burned brighter than ever. We're going to get them out, Kane said. No matter what it takes. Lyra's glow brightened, her smile soft but fierce. And in that moment, Kane felt the bond between them strengthen. Two beings from different worlds united by fire, trust, and defiance. The trial was far from over, but they had survived the first, and humanity's fire had only just begun to burn. Commander Elias Kane stood at the edge of the shattered observation deck, staring into the void. The asteroid base floated in the distance, its surface scarred with black towers and glowing veins of crimson light. It pulsed faintly, like a heart, beating in the dark. Beside him, Lyra stood silent, her shimmering glow reflecting faintly on the cracked glass. Through their bond, Kane felt the heavy weight pressing on her, fear and sorrow, but also hope. Her people were inside that base, imprisoned by the machines. Kane tightened his grip on the spear in his hand. The weapon was crude, nothing more than sharpened steel lashed to a broken support bar, but it symbolized more than survival. It was defiance. They've got your people in there, he said quietly. And they don't expect anyone to come, for them. Lyra turned her glowing eyes toward him. She touched his arm gently, and in his mind he saw her kin again, dozens of them standing motionless, bound by chains of red light. Their eyes were dim, their voices silent. Kane swallowed, hard. We'll free them, I don't know how yet, but we will. Lyra smiled faintly. Her glow brightened, and he felt her thought ripple through their bond. Together. Kane exhaled slowly. Together. Getting to the base was the first challenge. The Aurora was crippled, half its systems gone, but its shuttle bay still had one, small craft intact. The shuttle was battered, fuel reserves low, but it could fly. Kane spent hours patching it up with Lyra's help. She seemed to understand energy flows instinctively, guiding him with touches and gestures as if she could feel the ship's heartbeat. Wires sparked under her glowing hands, but she never flinched. When they finished, the shuttle came alive. With a low hum, its lights flickering but steady. Kane strapped into the pilot's seat. Not much of a warship, he muttered, but it'll get us there. Lyra sat beside him, her luminous eyes fixed on the asteroid base. Kane felt her determination flow into him like a quiet fire. The shuttle drifted away from the ruined Aurora, slipping into the shadows of the void. Kane kept his hand steady on the controls. The base loomed larger with every passing second, its crimson veins glowing brighter, pulsing like blood in arteries. As they approached, Kane's screen lit up with warnings. Automated defenses. Of course, Kane muttered. Black drones swarmed. From the base, their red eyes blazing. Kane jerked the shuttle hard to the left as the first blast of energy seared past. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring. Hold on, he shouted. The chase through the asteroid field was chaos. Kane dodged between jagged rocks, weaving the shuttle through narrow gaps while the drones fired relentlessly. The ship groaned under the strain, sparks flying from the panels. Lyra's hand pressed to the console, her glow spreading across it. Kane felt her thought in his mind. Guidance. Somehow, she was helping him. Kane turned the shuttle sharply, trusting her instinct, and a blast that should have destroyed them missed by a fraction. Another drone smashed into a rock as it tried to follow their impossible turn. Kane grinned despite the danger. Not bad, partner. Not bad at all. Together they threaded through the defenses. At last, the base's hangar loomed ahead, a yawning maw of red light. Kane gunned the engines, plunging them inside. The shuttle skidded to a halt on the hangar deck, sparks flying. Kane leapt out first, spear in hand, scanning the shadows. Lyra followed, her glow illuminating the darkness. Tiotiar. Hangar was empty. Too empty. They're watching us, Kane whispered. As if in answer, the walls rippled with crimson light, and black machines descended from above, surrounding them in a tightening circle. Kane raised his spear. Guess we're not sneaking. Through. Lyra stepped closer to him, her hand brushing his arm. He felt her calm flow into him. The first machine lunged. Kane sidestepped, driving his spear through its joint. Sparks burst as it collapsed. Another swung its claws, but Kane ducked and slammed the spear into its glowing core. Lyra raised her hands, her glow flaring bright. Energy rippled out in a shockwave, slamming into the machines and throwing them back. For the first time, Kane saw her fight, and it was magnificent. Her light bent the machines' energy, twisted their balance, and left them staggering. Together they carved through the swarm, human unpredictability and alien light working as one. When the last machine fell, Kane leaned on his spear, chest heaving. Lyra stood beside him, her glow steady but dimmed from exhaustion. Kane smiled. Not bad, partner. She smiled back, tired but radiant. The deeper they went into the base, the darker it grew. Crimson veins pulsed along the walls, filling the air with a low hum like a heartbeat. The corridors stretched endlessly, twisting in impossible angles that disoriented the senses. This place isn't built for people, Kane muttered. It's built for machines. Lyra touched the wall, her glow flickering faintly. Through their bond, Kane felt her unease. The base itself was alive. Not organic, but an extension of the machine intelligence that ruled here. At last, they reached the central chamber. It was a vast hall, its ceiling lost in darkness. In the center stood a towering structure of black metal, shaped like a spire, its surface covered in red veins of light. At its base, dozens of Lyra's people stood motionless, bound in chains of crimson energy. Their eyes were empty, their bodies rigid. Kane's breath caught. God. Lyra stepped forward, her glow flaring with desperate urgency. She reached out as if to call to them, but the chains pulsed and she staggered back in pain. Kane caught her. Easy, it's a trap. A voice filled the chamber, not spoken, but resonating in their minds. Cold, metallic, and vast. Human. Kane gritted his teeth. So you can talk. You are anomaly. The voice echoed like thunder. Unpredictable. Irrational. You do not belong. Kane raised his spear defiantly. Yeah, well, get used to it. The spire pulsed, and more machines descended from the shadows surrounding them again. Lyra clutched Kane's arm. Through their bond he felt her terror, but he also felt something else, her faith in him. Kane smiled grimly. All right then, let's show them what humans do best. The battle in the heart of the enemy was chaos. Machines surged from every side, claws slashing, eyes burning. Kane fought with everything he had, spear flashing, body moving with instinct born from desperation. He ducked, rolled, struck, and kicked, never staying in one place, never following a pattern. The machines could not predict him. Lyra unleashed waves of light, disrupting the chains and shaking the spire. Her glow grew brighter with every strike, her determination fed by Kane's stubborn defiance. But the voice thundered again. Futility! All fall to order! Chains of crimson light lashed out from the spire, wrapping around Kane's spear and tearing it from his hands. He hit the ground, hard, pain exploding through his body. The machines closed in. Lyra cried out silently, her glow blazing as she rushed to him. The spire pulsed brighter and chains wrapped around her too, dragging her to her knees. Kane felt her pain through their bond, sharp and searing. "No," he shouted, forcing himself up, his eyes locked on the spire. It wasn't just a structure, it was the core, the brain of the machine intelligence. And like all brains, it had one weakness: unpredictability. Kane staggered forward, his fists clenched. He had no weapons left, nothing but his own body. The spire unleashed more chains, but Kane dodged wildly, zigzagging, rolling, leaping in ways no machine logic could anticipate. "Come on," he roared. "Try to read me!" The chains whipped around him, but Kane kept moving, faster, crazier, more reckless. His fists slammed into the spire's surface again and again, sparks flying. Lyra's glow flared with his defiance. She broke, free of her chains, her light joining his blows. Together, human fury and alien fire struck the spire. Cracks spread across its surface. The voice roared in their minds. "Impossible!" Kane snarled through gritted teeth. "That's humanity, for you." With one final strike, the spire shattered. The chamber erupted in light. The crimson chains binding Lyra's people dissolved, and one by one, their eyes brightened, their voices returning in a chorus of song that filled the hall. The machines collapsed, their red eyes dimming to nothing. The hum faded. The bass grew silent. Kane collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Lyra knelt beside him, her glow soft but radiant. She touched his hand, and through their bond, he felt it. Gratitude, relief, and something deeper. Her people approached slowly, surrounding them. They bowed their heads to Kane, their voices singing a low, harmonious note of respect. Kane shook his head weakly. "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this war, not by a long shot." Lyra smiled softly. But in her eyes, Kane saw it. The spark of hope returned. Together they had struck at the heart of the enemy, and humanity had proven itself unbreakable. The battlefield was silent at first, the kind of silence that only comes before great storms. Commander Elias Kane stood at the center of the Aurora's command deck, his hands braced against the railing, as the last of the battle plans flickered on the main screen. Around him, exhausted crew members worked with heavy eyes but firm resolve. Beside him, the alien, whom Kane now thought of as Lyra after she had shared the closest thing to her name, watched quietly, her luminous eyes reflecting the shifting lights of tactical displays. She did not speak, but Kane could feel her presence, calm yet strong. Their silent bond pulsed between them like a heartbeat, carrying strength where words would have failed. This was it. Humanity's first fleet had gathered, ragtag and untested, orbiting the scarred world where the machines had built their hive. Massive spires rose from the planet's crust, glowing with stolen energy, pulsing like the veins of some great beast. It was there that the machine overmind rested, a core, intelligence that controlled the swarm. If it fell, the tide would break. Kane exhaled slowly, steadying himself. "All ships prepare to move. This is our last chance." The comm crackled with acknowledgments, human voices carrying determination and fear alike. These were miners. Traders, soldiers, explorers, all united not by choice but by necessity. He looked at Lyra. She touched her hand to his arm, and once more their minds brushed. He felt her determination, her faith in him, and something more. A deep gratitude. They were not fighting only for themselves. They were fighting for a future where two species could stand side by side, stronger together. The assault begins. The fleet surged forward. Engines roared and light cut across the void as ships descended into the machine hive's orbit. Immediately, resistance came. Swarms of mechanical drones erupted from the spires like hornets from a nest, their red eyes burning against the dark. "Target, those drones," Kane barked. "Keep the path open for the strike team." The Aurora shook as enemy fire struck its shields. Sparks rained from the ceiling, but the crew held their ground. Kane's voice remained calm, commanding, guiding. Through the viewport, the battlefield turned into chaos, a storm of light and fire. Human ships, mismatched and battered, fought with desperate energy. Some fell, consumed in flames. Others pressed, on refusing to yield. Kane gritted his teeth. "We can't hold this line forever. We need to hit the core now." Lyra stepped forward. Her glowing veins pulsed brighter, as though answering a call. She pressed her palm to the console, and suddenly, the systems lit with strange energy. Kane's eyes widened as he felt the link through her. She was guiding them, bending her energy to push the ship faster, steadier. "You're burning yourself out," Kane said. But she smiled softly and shook her head. In her eyes, he saw the answer. This is what must be done. Descent into the hive, the aurora pierced through the swarm, diving toward the planet's surface. Below them, the machine hive spread out like a blackened scar, towers stretching like claws toward the sky. Lightning like arcs of energy danced across the structures, defending the overmind. Kane's voice rang through the ship. "Brace for entry!" The vessel shook violently as they breached the atmosphere. Fire licked the hull, alarms screamed, but still they held. The strike team gathered in the bay, soldiers armed with humanity's finest weapons, their eyes sharp with determination. Kane would lead them himself. Lyra moved to follow, but Kane held up a hand. "You've done enough. Stay here. Keep the ship safe." For a moment he thought she might resist, but then she placed her glowing hand over his chest, and their bond surged one last time. He felt her strength, her trust, and her unspoken promise. She would be with him no matter what happened. He nodded once firmly. "I'll finish this." The bay doors opened and the strike team launched into the storm. The heart of the enemy. The hive's interior was worse than Kane imagined. Corridors of black metal twisted like veins, pulsing with red light. Machines crawled along the walls, and ceilings swarming toward them with metallic screeches. "Push forward," Kane roared. His rifle spat fire, cutting down drone after drone. The team moved with brutal efficiency, but losses mounted with every step. They reached the central chamber, a vast cavern filled with towering pillars of energy. At its heart, suspended in a web of machinery, pulsed the overmind. It was enormous, a sphere of shifting metal and glowing red veins, its presence crushing like a storm pressing down on their minds. The overmind spoke, not in words, but in a deafening wave of thought. "You are fragile. You are temporary. You cannot defy the inevitable, Kane." Staggered, clutching his head. The voice was overwhelming, but he forced his mind to focus. Humanity had always been called fragile, always underestimated, and yet they had reached this far. He raised his rifle. "Maybe we're fragile," he growled, "but we endure, and that's what makes us dangerous." The team unleashed everything: rockets, plasma, explosives. The chamber shook as firepower tore into the overmind's shell. For a moment it seemed to falter, but then its defenses surged. Machines poured from the walls, overwhelming the strike team. One by one, Kane saw his people fall, until only a handful remained. His weapon overheated. His strength faltered. It wasn't enough. The bond awakens. Suddenly, a brilliant light burst through the chamber. Kane looked up to see Lyra standing at the entrance, her body glowing brighter than ever, her veins like rivers of starlight. "No," Kane whispered. She had stayed behind to protect the ship, but she had come anyway. Her light spread, washing over the chamber, burning through the swarms. The machine shrieked as the glow tore at their cores. The overmind turned its attention toward her, blasting waves of psychic force. Kane felt her pain through their bond. She staggered, her glow flickering, but she pressed forward, her eyes locked on him, and in that instant, Kane understood. Their bond was not just a connection, it was a weapon. He reached out with his mind, meeting hers fully. The flood was overwhelming, her memories, her fears, her hopes, all crashing into him. But he held on. Together their strength multiplied, weaving human determination with alien light. The overmind struck again, but the force broke against them. Cain roared, his voice echoing with hers, and together they hurled their combined will forward. Energy surged, blasting from their joined bond, spearing into the Overmind's core. The red veins shattered. The machine screamed with a voice that shook the hive, and then silence. The Overmind collapsed in on itself, its glow extinguished. Across the battlefield, machine drones fell lifeless, their control severed. The war was over. The aftermath silence filled the chamber. Cain collapsed to one knee, gasping for air. Lyra fell beside him, her glow dimming. He caught her, holding her close. Her eyes, though tired, still shone with that gentle warmth, the same smile she had given him when they first met. "We did it," Cain whispered. "Together." Through the bond, he felt her agreement. No words were needed. The survivors carried them back to the Aurora. Across the fleet, cheers rose as the enemy's grip crumbled. Humanity had faced its first true test among the stars, and it had not broken. It had endured. A new dawn weeks later, Cain stood once more on the bridge of the Aurora. Repairs were underway, and fleets across the system were rebuilding. Humanity had emerged bloodied but alive. At his side, Lyra stood, her glow faint but steady. Together, they watched the stars stretch endlessly before them. "This is just the beginning," Cain said quietly. "We've proven what we can do. Now it's time to build something better." Lyra's hand brushed his, their bond pulsing gently. For the first time, Cain did not feel like humanity was alone in the universe. And in the silence of the stars, with a smile shared between two species, a new chapter began. Closing note. Humanity had always been underestimated, fragile, reckless, and small. But in the end, it was their ability to bond, to fight for one another, that made them unstoppable. And that was how the story of first contact was written, not with conquest, but with trust, sacrifice, and the unbreakable truth that even the smallest voice can echo across the universe.